Hello everyone, welcome to Snap Take. I think this might be a 9 video week because we've got OTA leaks once more, the exact same place that they were leaked last 2 weeks ago, whenever it was. They have been leaked again. These still feel exactly like Glenn Jones' words. I'm assuming this is real until proven otherwise. We'll see if this happens every single time that there's a new OTA, but this is an absolutely huge OTA. We're going to talk about all the changes. The two biggest ones you can see on your screen. Werewolf by Night is going to be a 3-1 it seems, and Leech goes back to a 5-5. Hell yeah. Before we do that though, I'm giving you some stuff. Want some stuff? All right. So for the next, how many? Let's say between now and next Tuesday, right? That's 7 days, right? There will be a giveaway on every single video. The video with the most comments will get a season pass given away in those comments. And then 6 other videos will get either 500 credits or a premium mystery variant. So you can take your chance at winning one of these by leaving a comment on this video and being subscribed. Hopefully you participate. The season passes from me. The premium mystery variants and 500 credits times 4 are from Second Dinner. They've given them to content creators. So you're going to see a lot of those going around, but I wanted a grand prize and I want you to have the season pass if you don't. If you, just so you know, if you have Blink, you can wait for Gilgamesh. I don't really care. It's fine either way to me. All right, so these are the balance updates. I'm scared to refresh it because they might disappear. This week is slightly heavier on nerfs and sideway changes than usual, as we'd like to reshape the existing metagame a touch. Given that we know Leech has changed, yeah, that sounds like that means that they don't like that Leech has taken out a ton of options. And now, I don't think Leech is a problem. I think if you're playing on reveal, your opponent snapping you on 3, you should probably have just run. Generally speaking, in a lot of games, when your opponent snaps you on 3, if you don't have your stuff, the right thing to do is to leave. You're probably staying in too much if you're struggling to climb. That said, there's a lot of lower collection players who collected a lot of higher series things that are on reveal, and having a lot of higher series things that are on reveal, including the last 2 week spotlight caches, is going to hurt those lower collection players and hurt second dinner sales. So I get the change. We're hoping a couple of the existing top decks will slide into more even positions within the larger field. While the current metagame is fairly healthy on our internal metrics, it's not as healthy as some have been, and we'd like to aim more closely to those targets while keeping things fresh. Cool. So Captain America goes from a 3-3 to a 3-2. Finally, ongoing, your other cards here have +2 power, so if you can fill that location, Captain America is fundamentally 8 power. If you've been paying attention, you know Gladiator is a 3-8, and that's a ton of power. Captain America being a 3-8 is also going to be an absolutely excellent card, a ton of power. People are like, this isn't really that big of a buff, this isn't that good. I think they're wrong. I think the difference between 3-6 and 3-8 is absolutely humongous for a 3 power card. I think this might have a home in Surfer, will have a home in Ongoing, and then I'm going to tell you one more, but let's see what they had to say about Captain America. As you may have seen in various social media discussions, we've been reluctant to buff Cap. For reasons that aren't obvious, they include keeping the game simple and maintaining existing tutorials. However, this change we eventually arrived at shouldn't threaten either of those. While Spectrum is a strong deck on the competitive side, the Spectrum deck performs worse for newer players with smaller collections. This should be a tidy buff to the archetype for early series play. Cool, I like that. But even more than that, Gilgamesh is coming out. His current text is that he's a 5-7. Gilgamesh is coming out as a 5-7, and the text on that 5-7 is +1 for each card with buffed power in play, or on your side in play. And it doesn't say permanent power like Sebastian Shaw does. So I think cards like Captain America and Blue Marvel might pump Gilgamesh, and if that's the case, then this Captain America buff is beyond gigantic. This is going to be a game-changing buff if that is exactly how these cards work. And I think Captain America is going to be an amazing card if that's the case. Cool. So keep this in mind. Keep that change in mind. I haven't heard anyone else say that yet, so that one's for free. All right, Spectrum is now going to be a 6-6 from a 6-7. Of course, the cap change is a pretty decent buff to existing strong Spectrum decks too. No comment before 2, Glenn. Sheesh. We want these decks to hold a spot in the metagame, so we've given it a lot of rope while waiting to see if cards like Enchantress will be enough to fight back. However, the deck has remained a top performer and approached levels that require a rebalance. That made a cap buff more dangerous, so it's a small compensatory nerf to keep things in balance. The deck had the best win rate in the game, right? The Punisher deck, the one that's running like US Agent or Swamp Thing, it had the best win rate in the game until Blink came out and then Leech was changed. So I could see that why they're worried. I don't think it was as good at top levels, but hey, the high majority of players are not playing at the top levels. That deck was really frustrating to play against. It was really good. It ran a lot of counters. I get the weakening of Spectrum. I wish they had waited a little longer. They are further weakening one other card. That's Luke. Luke goes from a 3/4 to a 3/3. One of the best cards in the top Spectrum decks. Luke does extra work by also hampering Afflict decks a bit, making it harder for them to contend for the metagame crown. A slightly weaker Luke is good for these decks and also paves the way to slot Luke into successful Cerebro shells once more. Cool. Luke goes in Cerebro. He's in Noki. He's in, various ongoing shells. He's still going to be a very good card. Cerebro 3 has long been just a little bit, just not a lot, but just a little bit outside of the meta. I think this Luke buff might push it back into the meta. Luke nerf might also push it back into the meta. The other thing this does that's really important is this makes Luke easily killed by Lady Deathstrike. It also makes it a more likely target of Red Guardian. All those things are good for the metagame, especially because coming up in next month? Yeah, I believe it's next month. July, not June. Coming up in July, we get a whole bunch of Afflict cards, and a slightly weaker Luke, a Luke that has more answers, makes those Afflict cards better. So this is future buffing in the same way I think Captain America is, while also negating or weakening a deck that's right now extremely powerful. I don't think this is going to change most of the time Luke is played, but you're going to lose some percentage of games where you wouldn't earlier, where the opponent's going to have that Deathstrike or that other card to beat it. Baron Mordo is now a different card. It sets the top card of your opponent's deck till 6 cost until turn 6. So you play it, it makes the top card of the opponent's deck cost 6. They drew a 6 on turn 6. It's going to revert to its original cost, but it's going to be stuck as a 6. And it's not auto-drawing the card. It happens during the draw step. This is going to be too good. Let's see what they said, and then I'll explain why it's going to be too good. Everyone's sleeping on this. I would bet almost anything. This is that that Black Widow buff all over again. Baron Mordo has long been one of the weakest cards in Snap, often functioning as worse Yondu for players, in that the drawback could mean your opponent just gets a free card. This tweak to the original design maintains the disrupt from temp, but makes sure the effect more strictly negative for your opponent. If I can bounce this and make you draw multiple 6s, I probably win. Against most decks, if I can make you draw multiple 6s and you're doing anything mid-rangey, I've won that game. Beast with Baron Mordo, I think, is going to be a problem. I'm super excited to try this and bounce. I already messaged Gio about it to be like, yo, this might be a thing. Using Mordo multiple times and saying you can't draw is wild. I can go Mordo into Grandmaster. I can go Mordo into Beast, into Mordo and Grandmaster, and just be like, go to hell. You don't get cards. Everything you have in your hand out for the first turn is a 6-coster. That's ridiculously frustrating. This card is going to be a problem. I'm calling it right now. I think that this is a mistake. All right, Grandmaster becomes a 2/2. Grandmaster was completely unplayable. They don't believe recently in releasing unplayable cards without buffing them, except I guess Hercules, who got buffed and is still bad. This is a significant but fairly straightforward change to a card beloved by many players that fail to find a role in the metagame. While we often aim cards high on release, Grandmaster was a unique case where we felt our testing was unlikely to provide the best possible thing to do with the card. It's just got so many potential applications. Turns out we were too conservative, so we're trying out a sizable buff. I think Grandmaster's probably fine now. I expect to see a lot more junk, so I don't think it's going to be great, but I think Grandmaster is probably fine now. I don't think this is as big a buff as people seem to be assuming. Grandmaster's just hard to use unless you really only want one reveal in your deck. That doesn't happen to cost 6, and that's rare, so I don't love Grandmaster. I don't know what else to say about that. I don't think it's going to be great now. I think it'll be better. It's definitely a lot better, but it's not great. All right. The first big one, Werewolf by Night. I think Mordo's a big one. Most people don't, but I definitely think Mordo and Cap are big ones. Werewolf by Night is going to be a 3/1. It's a card we've been reticent to let live at 3 to the sheer amount of leaping can get out of hand fast. That said, in the month since its release, we've seen a lot of strong and successful experimentation among 3-cost cards. Red Guardian, Nocturne, Gladiator, etc. Sebastian Shaw. And Werewolf seems like a bit more fair today in today's world than it did upon release. Plus, being able to start with a small amount of power is more evocative of the Werewolf canon we want the card to communicate, starting weak and becoming a monster. Look, this is huge. Werewolf was at a 3-3, probably the best card in Marvel Snap. I think at a 3-1, I don't know if it's the best card in Marvel Snap, but I'd be shocked if it's not a top 10 card in Marvel Snap. Darkhawk decks, Annihilus decks, Bounce decks, Loki decks, Surfer decks all get a ridiculously huge boost. If you want decks for these changes, we'll talk about that in a few minutes at the end of the video. But like, Werewolf is going to be huge. This is going to be one of the best cards in the game. Hopefully you have him. If you don't, hopefully he's in Spotlight soon or you have tokens, because this is an amazing card. All right, Leader gets to be a 6-3. Probably not a lot of leaders on the balance bingo cards at home, but this card has been languishing. We were hopeful that Leader's stocks would raise with Red Hulk, as that made Leader a clean answer to one of the best 6s in the game, but that's not what ended up happening. This buff isn't likely to move the needle in a big way, and we wouldn't want to. Leader's not a card players enjoy seeing too often. Even so, there's enough room to improve that we feel confident Point of Power will be a small but helpful bump. Sure, have a great time. I don't have any real takes. Enjoy yourself with Leader. I don't think it's really worth it. It's an occasional good as you're going through a Series 3 card. Here's a huge one. This is the biggest meta shaker of the week, without a doubt. No matter how good Mordo is, no matter how good Cap or Werewolf is, taking Leech out of the meta completely re-changes what decks are good in Marvel Snap, and it's worth paying attention to. Leech is becoming a 5-5. Speaking of unexpected outcomes, we decided to take Leech back to 5. Our primary Leech target with the initial move was Annihilus, though we did see value in strengthening one of the few answers to a handful of other powerful endgame threats. However, Annihilus wasn't substantially affected by the increased presence of Leech, and the win rate for Leech itself grew higher than we'd hoped to see against other strategies, which is, again, I think people refusing to appropriately assess Leech games and adjust their decks, but that's neither here nor there. Narrowing the range of competitive viability in the game. That's important. It did narrow the range of competitive viability, which is especially important for people who are not near collection complete or collection complete like I am. Of course, we also heard the public discontent around leaning this hard on Leech as a valve within the metagame. We've determined we don't want this card bearing that kind of weight. That said, 5-3 wasn't playable, so we're giving it back some more power in an effort to help keep Leech meaningful. Leech isn't meaningful. I would be shocked if Leech matters. This is a nice way to say, look, it's not terrible, but it's a dead card. I'm pretty sure it's a dead card. It's a little annoying that Werewolf is Series 5 and Leech is early series, and they basically made Werewolf great and Leech terrible, but they also made Cap great, and Cap is an early series card, right? So, like, they made Cap great and they made Mordo great, and both of those are earlier series, so it's not like they just buff things that were high series. The last one is Sentry, goes back down to a 4-8. Same exact ability, Void becomes a 4-8. We have determined it's necessary to weaken Annihilus Shell in the interest of metagame health, and this adjustment is in pursuit of that goal. I've been saying for ages, Annihilus is probably the best deck in the game. They kept hitting it in like slightly sideways. They're eventually going to have to do something really serious to the Annihilus card, I think, because I don't think this is going to do it. We'd hope to avoid it entirely. Sentry at 10 power is a more interesting card, especially with stuff like Scar. To that end, we've explored potential revisions to Annihilus instead, but we weren't able to find a change we could stand on confidently in time for this OTA, which means that they are eventually changing Annihilus. It's also worth noting that Ika Anihawk deck, the Anature deck that won the Snap Judgments League Season 1 in the hands of Slush Death, is going to be dead. You cannot play Scar in that deck. Scar is significantly worse with Leech now, well, it doesn't work with Sentry, and it's significantly worse with Darkhawk, so that deck is now gone. They've fundamentally nerfed that deck out of existence, so hopefully you weren't relying on it. We may revisit Sentry later if that work proves more fruitful, but for now, we're just reducing some of the bite that combo packs by reverting Sentry to its original stats. Cool. Let's see what they do to Annihilus, because this is basically them saying, we're sorry we had to do this, but Annihilus was too much. And that's fine. That's ultimately fine. I think Annihilus is too much, especially with the Werewolf buff. I think Annihilus with Werewolf is completely obnoxious, and anyone who didn't see that play line happening all the time prior is about to learn a very rude lesson about how powerful it is, because Werewolf on 3 gives you plenty of time to play other stuff into Annihilus. You can go, in fact, Werewolf, Sentry, Annihilus, a bunch of ones, and you basically guarantee yourself a win. It's incredibly strong. So I think that that package is going to need a change. This is a huge OTA that's going to warp the living crap out of the meta. We're going to have to wait and see exactly how. I think Annihilus stocks are down, but not down severely. The Leech buff is enough there. I think Werewolf by Night is an immediate meta card. Grandmaster is better, but not enough better. I think Mordo is a mistake. Luke Cage is and Spectrum are perfectly fine. They change things in good ways. Captain America is going to be absolutely stellar. That is my take on this OTA. Now, some of you probably want decks for these cards with these updates. I'm going to do that for you on Thursday afternoon, assuming that this is the actual OTA. We still don't know for sure. I'm 95% sure at this point, given that what happened last time that this is going to be the OTA. However, 95% is not 100%, right? Given that that's the case, we're going to wait until Thursday. This is why it might be a 9 video week. We're going to wait till Thursday afternoon when that OTA comes out. And if that OTA is this, then I'll have a bunch of decks for you. Hopefully that seems fair for everybody. I appreciate all of your support. If you're interested in Namora, check out this morning's video for Namora. Namora is going to be way better once Leech is nerfed, if Leech is nerfed. And then we have like 4 or 5 days to really figure out how good Namora is without Leech being everywhere. So make sure you keep that in mind. Make sure you check out tomorrow's video for another chance to win either a season pass, 2 premium mystery variants, or 500 credits. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. Peace.